Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. I didn't start working in repair from just fixing MacBook motherboards or working on data recovery and Apple products. I actually started in the recording studio industry in that world in the mid-2000s. I worked at Progressive Music, which was a small 35-room facility in the Film Center building, and I also worked at Avatar Studios, which used to be called Power Station back in the day. It was a gigantic studio, one of the few places that you could actually record a symphony orchestra in New York City. It was one of the best studios in the world. I got to work there as an intern at first, not paid because I was a teenager who didn't know what I was doing, and eventually after enough of cleaning up other musicians' puke when they would get high or drunk, I was trusted enough to be able to get the falafel order at Azuri Cafe for people like Rich Costi or Nick Didia. And once I had gotten enough falafel orders right and hadn't gotten anything wrong, they then finally trusted me to use a soldering iron and work on some of the equipment there. And one of the things that I learned while I was working with the great technicians there is that a lot of the stuff that I was working on were downstream from the military. So the gear that we had, when you look at the knobs and the circuit design and even some of the components, I didn't really understand that a lot of this would not have existed the way it did if not for the fact that a lot of it was downstream from the military. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Take this. This is an LA2A. This is a very, very popular compressor. If you're not an audio engineer recording music, you probably don't know why this is so impressive, but you put a voice through it and it just sounds awesome. This was not something that was just randomly invented on its own. This has a piece in it. It has an optical compressor unit that makes it sound amazing, and this actually came from a missile system. Jim Lawrence was asked to join Caltech's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, where he was assigned the task of developing optical sensors for the Titan missile program. And that optical sensor is actually the thing that is inside of this audio compressor that's being used 50 to 70 years later by people, if not in hardware, with plugins that are emulating the sound of it. Rupert Neve, he made all these amazing consoles, and he had started as a member of the Royal Corps of Signals in the British Army dealing with communications. He made a bunch of amazing consoles. Something like the Pultec equalizer. If you've ever seen one of these at a recording studio before, the person who worked on Pultec equalizers actually worked at RCA and was given a bunch of responsibilities by the US government for designing secret and top secret equipment for communications and radar for the military. The reason I bring this up is that when I talk about military right to repair on this channel, which I have before, it's not simply because Rossmann Repair Group has some sort of personal interest in fixing the Titan version 3 missile system. That's not something that's going to happen anytime soon. But rather it's because my first experience in technology as a job came from servicing devices where it was hammered into my head every day that everything we were working on is downstream from what was going on in the military. Not just the items and the switches and the VU meters and the styling of the casing and the buttons, but more importantly, the culture of it. The fact that all this gear that we got came with schematics and diagrams and manuals, and it was never imagined in a million years that you would try to hide this stuff from people, that was also from the military culture of that time. In that era, when you sold a piece of radar equipment, you also got books that were this large with every unit that said exactly how to rebuild this thing from scratch. Because if you are fighting a war in Japan or Germany, you're going to call the manufacturer's rep and say, can I connect to your cloud system to figure out how to make this work? One of the videos I did earlier this year, the US military might as well be dealing with the Genius Bar. I was playing a clip of the Secretary of the Army saying as follows.
When we tour bases, you see pieces of equipment that can be upwards of $2-3 million that will be unused for a year at a time because it's something that we can 3D print for a cost of $2 to $20. The American soldiers see that and they're not able to use it, and that is incredibly demoralizing.
I did a bunch of interviews after this video speaking to a number of different members of the military. There is a provision that was going to be put into the NDAA. This came from Secretary of Defense himself. It says as follows: identify and propose contract modifications for right to repair provisions where intellectual property constraints limit the Army's ability to conduct maintenance and assess the appropriate maintenance tools, software, and technical data, while preserving the intellectual capital of American industry. Seek to include right to repair provisions in all existing contracts and also ensure these provisions are included in all new contracts. After this happened, there was a bipartisan bill that was proposed by Senators Tim Sheehy and Elizabeth Warren, two people that it's if you don't understand American politics very much, you're not going to find them agreeing on a lot. But this was something that they managed to both agree on, and I thought it was a pretty interesting step forward. The White House agreed on this. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth agreed with this. Secretary of the Navy agreed with this. Secretary of the Army agreed with this. They were all on board after touring ships where most of the burners were dead because they weren't able to fix basic stuff for the kitchen, for the stove on the ship that has to feed thousands of people.
What we do makes no sense to me. Okay. And so I am a huge supporter of right to repair. I went on the Ford carrier. They had 8 ovens. This is a ship that serves 15,300 meals a day. Only 2 were working. 6 were out. And I said, you've got 5,300 people on the ship. You're telling me someone can't fix an oven? We got a lot of engineers. We can, but we need to wait for the contractor to get out. I asked the question about our elevators. If an elevator go out, what happens? We've got to call Huntington. They've got to call the 4 other people.
All this work that was done seems to be getting undone. And I want to explain, in my opinion, why I think it's being undone and explain what you can do about it and why you should care. Why should you care? I come out here and I talk about ownership every single day. And you guys are losing ownership every single day. We're losing ownership and the ability to fix what we bought and paid for every single day. So when you take a look and see that one of the largest customers of the largest behemoths in the United States is going to be signing something where they are trying to do things as a service, this really does kind of ring that death knell home that you're not getting repair back. And it's something that while I have failed consistently for a very long period of time to obtain real right to repair, doesn't mean I'm going to stop trying. See to include right to repair provisions in all existing contracts and also ensure these provisions are included in all new contracts. This was making its way through. I did several videos earlier this year where I spoke with military service members that were having issues when they were in the field and had to fix things. And we had a bunch of interviews posted on the channel. Senators Tim Sheehy and Elizabeth Warren have proposed a bipartisan bill. The Secretary of the Army, the Secretary of the Navy, the President, the Secretary of Defense, all these people were all on board on the same page, which is that if you're going to have $1 trillion military budget, you should be able to fix what you bought and paid for. And one of the problems recently, this appears to be getting sabotaged. And some of the people that are involved in sabotaging it are not just the names that you're used to. There's some other names like Palantir, companies that, again, I'm not going to really litter this video with a lot of it, are just companies that I'm just not the biggest fan of for a number of different reasons that you can likely guess. There are channels that their entire channel is essentially going over why they don't like this one company. I'll just leave it at that for this video. A look at the news. Defense contractors fight back against NDAA repair language. What's going on right now is they would like to take the right to repair language that is in this most recent contract, and they would like to essentially strike it all out, just do a giant X, and replace it with something called data as a service. Now, before I explain what data as a service is, or what this means, what do you think it means? Give me some hints. I'm just throw some things out there. Remember heated seats as a service? A baby monitor as a service? There are enough things that are turning into services. And what they want to do here is, because it has the word service, it sounds like, oh, look, you want a repair service? We're going to offer service. You're fine. Data as a service means that rather than actually be able to do the work in-house easily, you are now going to have to contact the manufacturer and go, please, sir, we're the Department of Defense, but would you mind giving us access to the repair tool so I can replace the broken part on our system? Do you have an active subscription? Maybe. Go away. But I'm in the South China Sea, and Xi Jinping is saying mean things about America. Please. No. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit there, but that's what this is. Data as a service means the Department of Defense has to ask major contractors for permission every time the Department of Defense needs repair tools or data. This is going to cause more delays in contested logistics environments, with service members having to get one-time access to data that they need to repair broken equipment from somebody who knows it better than me. Data as a service is a meme. Data as a service is heated seats as a service. As a service is exactly what you think it is. It's taking something that used to be something that you got when you bought the product and figuring out a way to charge you a recurring fee and to milk you for the rest of your life. And one of the problems that I have with that coming to the military is that once that comes to the military, whatever hope that we have to fight back against that in the consumer space is gone. A lot of items and things that we use in the consumer space come downstream from the military. And more importantly, when you hear people say that this is going to hurt innovation, many of the devices that are still in use today come from innovations that were created during a time when the military created products that came with full service manuals, full diagnostic information. The Titan missile system didn't have fucking data as a service. They gave the military what they needed to be able to service it. The LA-2A, when you bought that, you could get schematics, diagrams, everything from Yuri, so that down to the fucking nuts and bolts, you could get the exact same items to recreate that entire item from scratch. And innovation continued. The idea that innovation is going to go away as a result of this passing is insane. So let's take a look at why some of this stuff is coming to be, and I'll give you just some of my opinions on it as I scroll through. There was something that was proposed called the SPEED Act, and this is where you'll find data as a service. This was proposed by Mike Rogers and Adam Smith. They are on the Armed Services Subcommittee in the House. So if I were to take a look and walk over to Mr. Adam Smith, who butters their bread? We have General Atomics, Palantir, General Dynamics. Go to a different year, and we have Palantir, Leidos, Lockheed Martin, General Atomics, General Dynamics, Leidos, and of course, coming in at more than all of them combined, APAC, which again, that's a topic for a different video. We're not going to get into that in this one. And then we go to Mike Rogers. Mike Rogers, Lockheed Martin, Leidos, General Dynamics, L3 Harris Technologies, General Atomics. These two gentlemen's entire campaign is funded by military contractors, including Palantir. Let's just take a look at some of the people that work for these kind gentlemen. You have Tyler Jensen, Tyler Jensen, U.S. House of Representatives, 4 years, Legislative Assistant, Office of Congressman Adam Smith. Now he works at Anchor and Arrow Strategies, full-time, Executive Vice President for Public Policy, Lobbying Disclosure Report, Palantir Technologies. Tyler Jensen. How fucking stupid do you think the American people are? Palantir has some interesting services. Then they have Gotham, Foundry, the Army data platform. A lot of this is based on a subscription model, and the military is going to pay continuously for access to data analytics rather than owning the system. And that's one thing. But then when you put this into the NDAA in place of right to repair, you're taking that business model and you're normalizing it for everything. And I don't think that that is a good idea. If I go down the entire list, and I welcome you to do so, it's very easy with the amount of information that's out there nowadays. I could make this video 5 hours long. It's incestuous and it's disgusting. When you have something that is this bipartisan, this beneficial, not just for the American people, for the military, but for the culture as a whole, for it just to get gutted, crossed out, LOLJK, and this is a service. Here you go. Here's your BMW heated seats for the military. There's a reason that these people are looking to sneak in data as a service provisions and making everything into a service. As said by Pogo here, operation and maintenance costs comprise roughly 70% of a program's overall cost, and as US PERG has found, contractor employees cost 2.84 times as much as an average Department of Defense civilian employee performing the same job. So, if you turn everything into a service, and you have it done by private contractors, it's going to cost a lot more money. But more importantly, you're taking the concept of ownership away from the largest organization in the United States, and you're normalizing it. This goes everywhere else. The two people that are trying to strike out the right to repair provisions and replace it with data as a service are people that, in my opinion, as stated as objective fact, their campaigns are funded by the defense industry. Am I wrong? Their campaigns are funded by the defense industry. Check. Their employee goes on to work for a lobbying firm that represents Palantir. Check. Sensible language that saves the American taxpayer money is replaced with garbage that allows Palantir to rob the American public blind. Check. How fucking stupid do you think the American people are? Busy? Yes. Working 50 to 80 hours a week to feed their family? Yes. Overwhelmed at the sheer amount of tsunami of how they're getting fucked every time they open the news every single day? Yes. Stupid? No. What I'm going to ask of you is if you do not want to see your tax dollars go to a $1 trillion department of our government using everything as a service and essentially having the military equivalent of heated seats in a BMW, email your House representative, email your Senate representative, and tell them that you would like to see data as a service and the right to repair provision put back in. This is very bipartisan. Again, Elizabeth Warren, Tim Sheehy, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of the Army and Navy, Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez. The number of people from across the aisle that agree on this is crazy. The reason this has the level of widespread support that it does is because most people, regardless of their political views on everything else, don't want to pay a subscription for heated seats in their car. This is the military equivalent of heated seats in your car. Data as a service instead of right to repair. When these inventions and innovations came out in the 1930s through 1960s, they rippled for the next 50 years through the broadcast and consumer space in the United States and around the world in a great way. And I also have a feeling that if this type of anti-ownership crap takes hold in the military right now, that conversely, we will see this type of anti-ownership garbage take hold for the next 30 to 60 years in the consumer and professional space as well. And I don't want to see that happen. What I'm going to ask of all of you is do the following. Number one, if you live in the United States, figure out who your senator and your congressperson are. Number two, after you figure them out, find the contact page on their website. Number three, tell them that you think that data as a service should not be in the NDAA, and that rather you would like to see the right to repair provisions put back in there that were originally discussed by Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of the Army, the Secretary of the Navy, Senator Tim Sheehy, Senator Elizabeth Warren, and all them else. Put right to repair back in, take data as a service out. And if you want to explain why, and you want to explain in more detail, say what it means to you. This probably isn't the first video you're watching on this channel. You've probably watched many, many videos, and you've likely, if you've been along for the ride all this time, you know why everything being as a service sucks. You don't need me to write the email for you. I won't be able to write a perfect email for you. And honestly, if I do write it for you, it's going to come out as a form letter. It's not going to seem real. It's not going to be as genuine. I want you to write what you have to say and call with what you have to say. Now, some people may say, well, what's the point? Nothing's going to happen. Lewis, you've been working on this for 13 years. What progress have you made? And point fucking taken. Would you rather do nothing at all? I think that's even less productive. The amount of time that it takes to do what I suggested is less than the amount of time that some of you that don't install uBlock Origin spend watching ads. Consider it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I don't feel like watching Palantir erase what little is left of ownership. Definitely not for these rates either. If I knew you were this fucking cheap, I would have bought you myself. Ownership. Or a subscription. Do you subscribe to a politician or do you own a politician? I'm not really sure how that works. Anyway, that's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. My apologies if this video was a little bit scrambled. Just a little tired today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.
We also have the duty not to infringe the IP rights in the process. It is in fact the manufacturers who have the relevant rights, not consumers.